Hey there, it's Rachel Nichols, aka Scarlett, and you are listening to Anything Joe's, a collaborative journey through the world of G.I. Joe with Greg and Jaren. Yo, Joe!
Hello everyone and welcome back to Anything Joe's, a collaborative journey through the world of G.I. Joe. My name is Greg Engel.
And I'm Jaren Decker.
And we'll be your host today. Today on Anything Joe's, we're going to talk about our trip to Winterfest, the Louisville, Kentucky vendor expo that happened this January and was a pretty big hit. Would you not agree with that, Jaren?
I would. I mean, the drive was really long, but other than that, it was great.
So this is a spinoff of the Kentuckiana Joe Expo that happens every July, and it's supposed to be a more vendor-focused experience. It's smaller, it uses less rooms, and was supposed to be just kind of like a little show. I think they really just wanted to test the waters to see if 2 shows a year was a viable option for them. And if our experience was any indicator, I'm going to say that, yeah, it absolutely was. We were there for the early bird access, which is like the 9 to 10 a.m. where you pay a little bit more to get in, and it was already booming. And it's definitely not a large show by any standards. Again, it uses 1 room compared to the 3 rooms that Kentuckiana uses, but there were people everywhere. I don't know how much of that is people that are just like desperate to go to a convention because of such, it's been such a weird time, or if the demand for G.I. Joe that's just where we're at. Like, it's a really hot commodity right now and people are coming out in droves. Winterfest is, just like Kentuckiana, is by far the biggest 12-inch G.I. Joe show I think it exists in the United States. I've never seen as much stuff for the original G.I. Joes in one area anywhere.
Yeah, it was really nice seeing the mix. Like, it definitely didn't feel overwhelming either way. Like, there was a good mix. So people that enjoyed all forms of Joe were, pretty stoked. People that were looking for 12-inch stuff, great. There was all kinds of stuff. I saw a lot of vehicles that were huge. There's multiple booths selling figures, accessories, things like that. And then, of course, original figures, modern figures, and even quite a few people showing up with the classified, or even some with other 6-inch lines in addition to the classified line.
Yeah, it is truly a G.I. Joe show for a collector of any variety. We saw classified stuff there. We saw obscure Valor versus Venom era stuff. We saw 12-inch stuff. I mean, there's a little bit there for everybody. But of course, we were there for primarily original G.I. Joe stuff and modern era G.I. Joe stuff. So we'll talk a little bit about what we picked up and what we saw there. And then I'd also, at the end, kind of like to talk about my hopes and dreams for the future of these 2 shows that literally exist in our backyard. That alone almost puts an invaluable price on it for me, that it's so easy and accessible in a time where travel is still not really a viable option.
Yeah, I mean, it was probably 15 minutes from your house?
I mean, it is extremely close. I don't want to brag, but yeah, I mean, I couldn't have justifiably gone if it was any further away than literally in my backyard. Yeah. Not to mention, let's actually go ahead and dive in a little bit to, I had worked the night before that we were going to the show, and I work a 3rd shift job right now, and my shifts are 12 hours long. So I worked 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. and then I came home, I took a shower, I ate breakfast, and then Jaren is there, and we're on our way to 9 a.m. So I had been up all day. I was already like on the verge of space madness. But I was so excited to go, and I had just enough money to be like, I'm going to be able to get a couple great things. So I was like riding that wave, knowing that when the crash happened, it would be devastating. So we made the trip there. We get there, we found parking right away, which is sometimes an issue there because it's at a Hilton Garden Inn. It's like near the airport. So it does have good locations if you are coming from far away. And basically I guess a lot of cons are still in places like this, but basically in the back of a hotel. So we get there, and because we were leaving so soon after I got off work, and the longer we delayed to get there, the more likely I would not be conscious. So I was just like, we're just going to go for early bird. We were both eager to get started, and we both wanted one thing, which is the first thing we'll talk about. If you listen to our Kentuckiana episode, you'll know that it is pretty common for Roma Collectibles to put out an exclusive at shows like this. And you might also know from recent episodes that I've kind of been on a journey with these where the novelty of them is, I think, very alluring, and I've certainly amassed enough of them now that I have kind of a small collection of them. I mean, I guess it's no different than commissioning a custom figure or buying a custom figure off eBay, but I feel like there's a little bit more work that goes into this, and it's almost like taking a snapshot of a show that you're experiencing. So when I see these figures, I'm like, oh, I remember going to this show. This is who made them. This is what I got this year. So I already knew that we were gunning for these, and I wanted to make sure that we got them just in case they sell out, I have seen it happen before at Joe Fest. The one thing that I wanted sold out, so I didn't want to dilly-dally with that. So Roma Collectibles put out a figure. Jaren, do you want to talk about it a little bit? Because this is more in your wheelhouse.
All right, so if you've listened to the podcast, you know there's a few things that I really like which don't make a lot of sense. Tripwire, vamps, and bats. Probably my three favorite things. So this Roma Collectibles, built off of a bat body with a custom head, and then it came with like a snow leopard, is it's codenamed Bash. So that stands for Battle Arctic Skull Hunter. So he's kind of like a custom, pretty cool looking figure. Has some really unique accessories, gun I've never seen. There's like a little blue like hologram looking thing. I don't know what that was. I haven't figured it out yet, but I will. Mark my words, I will. And then of course it's built off the modern version of the bat, not the original. But it's a really cool. Roma normally does this thing where they have like it's like a plastic case for the card art, so you can pull the card art out, you can pull the figure out, set it up, you can put it back in, make it look like nothing ever happened, which is great because I like to display it loose. But if I ever change my setup, maybe it'll be one of the things that gets put back on the card, and I have that option, which I think is phenomenal.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of the way they package these. In previous episodes, I had spoken about the actual quality of the art on the card, and that is not an issue with this one. I think it looks pretty good. These are, it's still custom work, so it's kind of cobbled together, but it doesn't really bother me. I'm sure this is not a quote unquote, you had said a custom head, but I think it's more, it could be something from the Terminator line, maybe.
Maybe like a Kit Bash.
I can't place it specifically, but it definitely has come from something else. Same thing with the Snow Leopard. That Snow Leopard is got to be from something I'm just not recognizing.
I feel like it's one of those ones you would see at like the Tractor Supply store where they have all the different little animals.
Yeah. So if you haven't seen this, you don't want to look it up, you can go to our YouTube channel, and I'll have images of it posted there so you can get a better image of it. It's a simple custom. I'm not going to deny that, but there's something to be said for creating a character, no matter how simplistic it is, and the charm that comes along with that. Like anybody could probably make this figure in their own, maybe even for less money than what we paid for them. But that's not what this is about. This is about embracing other people's creativity. Like, the concept of this bat is cool. It's a good looking figure. I don't know, there's something about it. Looking at it now, I'm just like, it's delightful. Why would a bat come with a snow leopard? Like, that's two completely incompatible concepts. But in my mind, I'm like, well, okay, how would it, write that story? Because I do wish these had file cards on the back to kind of flesh out the creator's vision for it. But still, another great one. Probably one of the better ones over the last couple of years.
Yeah, and really, Roma Collectibles is great. Can't say enough good things about those guys.
Yeah, so let me lead into that a little bit. When we went to Winterfest, I already basically in my head knew who I wanted to deal with. I've mentioned this before, and it's worth mentioning it again that when you have a good experience with a retailer, it goes a long way. And Roma Collectibles is one of the people that I have done the most business with and enjoy interacting with the most. Aaron is very friendly, very knowledgeable, and very easygoing. When we went and approached him and I was talking to him, I already knew what I was looking for. And for the sake of the podcast, let me go ahead and tell you what that is. There's two figures that are on the top of my list, and they have been for a very long time. When we were recording the Kentucky Anna episode, it was the thing I was looking for then. I'm looking for a convention-exclusive General Mayhem from the Destro, one of the G.I. Joe convention sets. He's a very expensive figure, and every time I go after him, I'm like, well, if I find him, I have to have him. It will be one of the only things I can buy on my budget. That's fine. But I am eventually going to get this figure. They didn't have him last time, so I bought a Metalhead, which is another convention-exclusive figure that was very expensive from the same set that I also wanted. I really want figures that have never been made in the modern style in another format, and Metalhead didn't get a modern figure except for this one. So in that terms, it's worth the price for me. General Mayhem has only existed in an older convention set, and it was the original O-ring style. And although I do like that figure, I would prefer to get the modern figure first. So I knew that there would be a pretty strong possibility that I wouldn't find it. And I felt very certain that if Roma didn't have it, nobody would, because Roma brings in great international variants. He has a lot of con stuff. I've bought a lot of great, hard to find figures from him in the past. So my backup option was I'm looking for a con exclusive Claymore figure that's also very expensive. Isn't a great figure, but is the only modern Claymore figure. And I want him in my set. As a matter of fact, I've been going through a phase recently where I've looked at all the characters in the G.I. Joe universe chronologically to see who still needs to have a modern figure made. And from what my collection has, Claymore is the earliest figure I don't have a modern version of. So he's really high up there in my list of things that I'm looking for. Anyway, they didn't have either one of those. So I was immediately like, well, that is a bummer. But the pro to that is that I now have much more money to spend on other stuff than was expecting. We both picked up this exclusive figure because I think he only had 10 of them.
Yeah, it was pretty limited.
It was one of our high priorities just to make sure that we get them. And we talked to Aaron at length a little bit. He was very busy. Again, the show was booming. And he doesn't know us personally, so I don't want to I don't want to pretend like we're buddies. But I was like, hey, if you have time, listen to our show because we always speak so positively of you. And in what has got to be one of the highlights of my year, he was like, what's the name of your show? And I was like, well, we're called Anything Joe's. And then at the most serendipitous moment where a nice gentleman that's looking at his stuff goes, oh, I've heard of you guys. I just listened to your episode. That is,
dude, it was wild.
I could not ask for. If that gentleman is listening, I know we talked at length at the show, and I'm sorry that I don't remember your name. That is not on you. It's me at my old age forgetting everything. You did us such a solid. It made us seem less like fringe losers to people with the most modest validity in the podcasting universe. So I was like, yeah, check us out. We speak very positively of you, and we do. We have no affiliation with Roma at all. He does not know us. He wouldn't know us on site. But I have just had numerous great experiences with them, and I always enjoy dealing with them. He brings stuff that you just don't see every day, and I am at a level of collecting where that is a big deal for me, where I really love seeing stuff that is, even out of my price range, very cool to see in person. I did eyeball a Roddy Piper figure that was a convention exclusive that is astronomically expensive for what it is. And I was like, Jaren, do I want to buy this? I've looked at it numerous times. It was signed and not personalized, but opened and missing something. So I was like, it's a little bit of both. I don't mind buying open stuff, especially if I can get it cheaper. But when I look at this figure on eBay, it is there. I mean, I can see it. It's in the high triple digits. I've seen $600 or $700 for a sealed one, which is absolutely outside of my range. please don't entertain the option that I'm a high roller. I've just been collecting my whole life. That's the only reason my collection is like it is. I usually only go to these shows a couple $100 tops, unless I've been real busy selling stuff or trading stuff to have some extra funds. Anyway, 9 times out of 10, I look at these figures on eBay, and it'll be signed by Roddy Piper, R.I.P. But it's always personalized to like Mark or John, or I'm like, you got to really mark the price down for this. So this one was not personalized, missing an accessory, cut open. I talked to him a little bit about it. I would have had to get a chair and really wheel and deal for it to reach a price where he would be okay with it and I would be okay with it also. And I wouldn't have been able to buy anything else. Anyway, I passed on it, but it's worth mentioning that somewhere in my life, I will eventually get this not good figure that I still really need.
You know, to touch on the other aspect of Roma is, like you brought up, that he brings in such weird and unique and high dollar things. But he also is one of the best at just having regular figures within a good price range. You know, just his sheer variety of figures. He didn't get to bring as much to this show as, from what I've heard, he does to previous shows. But that's because it was kind of an unknown. You know, the weather was not looking great, and it was kind of a quick show sprung on everybody. But he still had a great selection, a lot of modern figures. A lot of modern vehicles as well. Things in case, out of case. It was great. He just had such a cool selection. So he kind of he's in that unique position where like he has hard to find stuff and he's got some really cheap stuff. So he can cater to your collection and to my collection.
Yeah, he had mentioned that most vendors were kind of getting downgraded in terms of how much room they would have for stock. So he made the option to leave basically all of his loose normal figures behind, which is a bit of a bummer because he, bar none, usually has the best prices on stuff like that. And if I'm looking to pick up a couple figures casually, or maybe I'm looking for a figure for a custom, that's where I would go. But Jaren, you're absolutely right. Like, he had tons and tons of good, I'd say, I guess uncommon would be the classification, carded figures, stuff from like the last 10 years that are, solid finds, just stuff that I've kind of moved beyond overall. But everything was, a great price. Do you want to talk about what you picked up from Roma Collectibles other than the exclusive?
Yes, I do. So, like I had already stated once, I love Vamps. I've got, of the 12 vehicles that I have, probably 6 of them are Vamps. Not counting the retro, the re-releases of the All-Striker and the Histings. But in my original, the majority of my original vehicles are Vamps. Or Stingers. On that Vamp mold. I love it. So I picked up one of the Fun School Jeeps, the police Jeeps. And let me tell you, this thing is beautiful. I love it. I bought a Law figure and put him in it because I think he looks great, which was your suggestion. Thank you for that. He came in super quick from an eBay seller, and he just looks perfect with it. I love it, and I want 12 more.
Yeah, so I have one of these also. That's part of the reason I recognized it right away. And I don't go crazy with international stuff like this because Fun School's just there's so much Fun School stuff out there. And sometimes you'll see it and go, this looks exactly like the regular US version. And then sometimes you'll see a repainted Jeep like this and you'll go, what the hell? This is amazing. So I have one of these also. I picked one up off eBay a couple years ago, and I picked up, there's a red race car version that I have as well. And yeah, I completely agree. I think they're very charming. When I saw them, I was like, oh, I didn't even think about this. Jaren would love this because he likes the Vamp so much. And then once we got to talking about it, I was like, yeah, you should get a Law and Order because he's an MP. It makes sense he would be in a police Jeep. And so I'm glad you're pleased with it. Because I think it's very charming. It captures, there's something about it, I guess because it's using a 1982 mold still, you look at it, and even though it's not that old at all, it still has a retro vibe to it that I think is charming. And with a little customization, you can really turn it into a quality piece. I'm not sure if it needs a gigantic sticker on the front that says Fun School.
That one's actually already come off for me.
Okay, well, there you go. Problem solved.
And I removed one of the ones on the back.
That's Fun School quality control right there, where the stuff that they use is so cheap. But again, the quality is almost second tier to the novelty of having a Vamp that's actually an already colored police vehicle.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's cool because they did modify it a little bit. Most police don't have a giant turret sticking off the back, so they modified that.
Yeah, that's fair.
They added like a little red light, and it's so fun.
Yeah.
I actually have all of all of my Joe figures set up right now, looking like a giant convoy on my desk next to my computer, and like the Vamp is kind of like leading the way, or the Jeep is like leading the way, and then two of my other purchases are also there, and then all of my retro Owl Strikers and my Vamps are all there as well.
Do you think you will continue on and pick up the other ones in this series, or are you good with just this one?
I will probably, realistically, I'll probably buy another one of the police ones just because I think it would be cool. I don't know who I'll put in that one, but I'll find somebody. And then I want to get one of the green ones because they re-released. They did like a green one.
Yeah, I need to get that one as well. It's like an army green Jeep.
Yeah, I mean it looks like a Vamp just without the gun.
Yeah, it has like a tire where the gun is. I don't have that one, and I'm like, no, these are not like, they're not overpriced. If you can find one that has good shipping, it's a good deal. I do have the racing Jeep one in my collection, and I think it's pretty great as well.
Yeah, I don't know what I'm gonna do with the racing one yet, but I will buy it.
Just kind of good stock fodder for like dioramas, or if you were shooting something where it's like they're like in their off hours or whatever. I think that this is a good vehicle to have for that.
Yeah, it might be one of those things that I just turn into just like their get around town vehicle.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, absolutely. And again, like I said, they're not expensive at all, and I think they are like they're real cool to have. They even the package art I think is like, I don't know, it's comical but endearing at the same time.
Yeah, right now you can get there's somebody selling from India, of course. It's the Jeep, the green Jeep, and another police one, both sealed, for $37 with $15 shipping.
Not breaking the bank by any stretch of the imagination. So we chatted with Aaron a little bit. We bought some stuff from him, and then we kind of moved on and did a lap of other stuff. And there were other great retailers there. I don't want to undercut any of the people that I didn't purchase from directly. I talked to the guy from Sibling Rivalry Toys, who does customs for the Kentuckiana Joe show, and he was kind of giving us the scoop on what they were working on. He mentioned that they might have a deluxe Vamp deal coming if they can get the stuff for it. So I'm very excited to see what that looks like. I've bought their exclusives, almost all of them, since they've been making them, and I like them a lot. They put a lot of work into their stuff.
If they do a Vamp, we have to do the night before tickets.
So last year they did that Appalachian Viper, which I thought was very creative and not a ton of work. And they had two versions. They had a version that doesn't really have a lot of paint on it. It's just more like a carded version of an existing figure. And then they had one that they had put some paint touches on, and those were gone by the time it opened to the general public. Like, it's the first place I went and they were gone. So in July, we'll not be messing around with that. I have it is kind of like, I don't know, these figures you can only get here at this show. So I'm like, if I only buy one thing, it should be the thing that I can't go buy on eBay later if I regret it. So anyway, we looked at a lot of the other people there. There's a lot of people there that only deal with 12-inch stuff, and that for me is like almost a complete hard pass. I wouldn't know where to start. I do want to have a 12-inch figure in my line, but I want it to represent like the entirety of the line, basically. So that stuff I'm always like, this is cool, but I don't know what I'm looking at, and I wouldn't know where to start looking if I wanted to buy it. I will say that they had more vehicles at this show than normal. There were or maybe they were just on display more, but I saw a lot of stuff that I was really sucked in by and was like, oh, look at this, look at this, look at this, look at this. But again, there was only one other retailer I knew I was going to do business with there, and that's Destro's Toy Den. I've talked about Destro's Toy Den before. It's run by Todd Henderson. He's a great dude. I dealt with him at Kentuckiana, and that's where Jaren got his original Vamp, and I got my Mean Dog, and I got a Triple T, and he put me on the trail of where I picked up my mobile command center, and it's great. And this was the first time that I went into the show where Todd and I had talked on Facebook previously, so I wasn't just some stranger that was talking to him about business, basically. So it was great to see Todd and talk to him, and basically was like, well, I know I'm going to buy from you regardless. And Todd has great stuff. Todd is like, all his vehicles are complete, period.
And clean.
Yeah, you're not getting into anything that Todd has done the homework for you. And that's good, because as somebody that has got a lot of vehicles that are incomplete and has reached a stage in his life where I really just want to buy complete stuff, it's nice to have that like knowledge. And so I picked up two vehicles. I bought a mobile battle bunker, which is a vehicle that I had as a kid. Came out in like 1990, so it's kind of in that awkward phase before things start getting real weird. And if you're not familiar with it, it looks like a big cube. and then the top half of it folds back and this missile rack pops up, and it's great. It's such a cheesy gimmick, but it's, as a kid especially, it was super cool, and is probably most well known for being utilized in the original comic because they dropped it from orbit and then they parachuted in to this battle scene, and it's pretty great. So I bought one of those, and I also picked up a vehicle I've never had, which was the Slugger, which is the vehicle that Thunder drives, and it's like came out in 1984. I've been on a bit of a tear recently where I'm picking up smaller vehicles from the early 80s that, for whatever reason, was either before my time or wasn't like alluring enough as a child to pull me in. But there's a lot of these vehicles that are not really extravagantly overpriced, and I've just been kind of scooping them up. I had recently picked up a Manta because I had never had one of those, and that was a pretty cheap purchase overall, but it's stuff that kind of helps fill the roster for things I was picking up. And Jaren, what did you find at Distro's Toy Den?
It was one of those things where like I had my eye on quite a few different things there, but I had already sunk most of my budget by the time I was deciding, and then went over budget, of course, because how can you stop yourself with all that cool stuff? But I went, and I think I had it narrowed down to about 3 vehicles, but the one that I could not escape was an APC. And it was, of course, like all the rest of them, 100% complete, both seat belts, everything. And in phenomenal shape. None of the tabs are broken. I mean, it's great. And it's like already one of my favorite things that I own, probably. Like it and the Vamp, pretty close. I like putting them together. But man, it was one of those things that the price was great. It was in, perfect shape, really clean. Stickers were all there. And I was like, I can't pass this up. And it was the biggest of the vehicles that I was looking at, so the shipping would have been more expensive if I tried to buy it online somewhere. I love it, and the APC was great. That it was kind of the theme of the day, I think.
Yeah, I don't think there's any doubt that going into it, I knew that Todd would probably give us the best deal, bar none, and I consider Todd to be a friend now that I've kind of talked to him at length, and so I wanted also to do him a solid by being like, I'm going to do business with you almost exclusively because I don't want you to have to pack this stuff back up. Yeah. And I want you to be successful. I want you to keep coming back to these shows.
And I want stuff.
So we bought some stuff from Todd, and as soon as we walk away, I am immediately internally like, man, I want an APC. So we stroll a couple booths down. I don't remember the information from these gentlemen. I think they came from Columbus, maybe.
Yeah, I think you're right.
But he had an APC on display, and I thought, I don't have an APC. I've never had an APC. I like the practicality and the common sense of the APC. So I talked to this dude, and he was like, yeah, one of the tabs on the hood was damaged, and it only has one of the 2 seat belts. And I wanted one so bad, I guess, that I was like, all right, gimme. And as I was looking at it, I found a vehicle that Jaren, for whatever reason, had been discussing just a few days before.
I think it was literally like the night before.
It was. And that's the only reason it was fresh on my mind, because we were just talking about it and we were comparing it to the Swamp Masher. And that is the G.I. Joe Badger from 1991. Now, Jaren, if you want to defend why this is such a high priority for you before I launch you into this, I saw it and was like, oh, Jaren and I were just talking about this. And it's a small vehicle, so it's not expensive. I'm going to go get him and tell him that it's over here. All right, take it away.
So I had already told Greg, I was like, okay, I'm done. Like, this is at the point where I was like, okay, I'm done. I've hit budget. I'm okay. I went over and I got some Marauders accessories, and that was pretty much it. And then he's like, well, you're going to want to at least take a look at it, because we had just been talking about it. He didn't tell me what it was. So I go up to where he had bought the APC, and there it is, and it's ugly lime green glory. It's probably 95% or more complete. It's missing the flag and 1 missile. Other than that, it's all here. I really don't have a defense for it, other than that in my random searching through G.I. Joe vehicles, it caught my eye. I don't know if it's because it looks like it could be a mutation of a Vamp or what it is. But I love it. So I get the hate on it. It's weird. It doesn't fit a lot of the themes that the original Joe vehicles are. But I'm already watch listing a couple other ones on eBay because I want like 3.
There's nothing wrong with this vehicle, and for somebody that will defend the Swamp Masher, which is just as ugly and even more ridiculous, I don't have any ground to stand on. I will say that the flag that you're missing, the flag part of it just says Badger on it, as if to announce to the enemy, "Hey, this is the name of my vehicle." But everything about it is fine. It's a good design. Honestly, if you colored this something different, it'd be great. It has a spring-loaded missile launcher. There's nothing wrong with it.
It's gonna be on the front. It's gonna be the front of the thing, and everyone's gonna shoot at it, and then everyone else can try to take the rest of the enemies out. Everyone will be looking at the silly Badger, and then all the armor will come in and destroy Cobra.
So the last thing that we hit, maybe not in this exact order, but this is the first time that Marauders Task Force had been set up at one of the shows that's localized to us. And if you've heard me talk about them before, I'm a huge Marauders Task Force guy. I've gone all in on those geared up figures that they do Saturday night, and I've amassed a pretty big collection of them, and I love them. So I went to see what they had on display, and they had tons of stuff. They had 2 figures they were showing for the first time exclusively there. It's like Shadow Ops and a Jungle Soldier, like kind of the camo patterns. So I picked up a couple of those, and then I was just started kind of shopping casually with stuff that I was like, okay, I've got some customs in mind. Give me a bunch of these. I mean, it's not worth going into the details, but I bought a bunch of different head figures that I didn't have it in my stock already. And then I was like, and give me this stretcher, and give me this blood bag, and give me this arm sling, and just a bunch of little garbage that I was like, okay, this is suddenly a very expensive purchase, but it's good to have that stuff because I do make a ton of customs with Marauders Task Force stuff because it's so versatile, and I like that line tremendously. And again, I want them to come back because even though they didn't have any geared up figures there that I didn't already have, they have shown stuff exclusively that is still not available on the website that I would have killed to have picked up at their other shows.
They were great. I bought, like I said, I had bought those weapons for the 1/12 scale, which I also forgot to mention. Roma Collectibles had the repaint new deco of the Duke, so I picked one of those up. So I was like, well, let's go see what Marauders has. I'll get them geared up, get some weaponry for them. But that was all I bought, only a couple dollars worth of guns. And it was fine. I was fine. And then Greg comes over and he buys all this stuff, and they give him this cool Marauders bag. And this really cool Marauders bag, and then they give him a pen. And I'm like, man, I want stuff. I want a bag. So then I was like, well, I might be over budget, but they take cards, so let's go ahead. So I had used all my cash, but then I went and I got the 2 new released figures. I got a couple geared up, got one of the dogs, and then I got a bag. So did I spend too much money because I wanted a free bag too? Yes.
Yes.
Do I regret it? No, because those figures are amazing. Did I get a pin? No.
You didn't get a pin?
No.
I'll let you look at mine. Did you consider just saying, hey, can I have a bag?
No. It was the principle. I didn't want to have to ask. I wanted them to be like, you know what? This guy, he's buying Marauder stuff. He should get a bag.
They were very cool. And there are not a ton of people that do these shows on their teams, so I appreciate them making the effort to come out. And I am pretty confident that, based on what I overheard, that most vendors there did tremendously well. I overheard a guy say that it's the best he's ever done in any of these shows. I heard another gentleman say that he wasn't sure if he would have enough product to even be at the next show. He'd done so well. So that's great, man. That makes me so happy. It makes me happy because it means that the future of these shows has a lot of potential. It means that the people that went there did extremely well and will want to come back, and that it was worth their time, and that word will spread to other vendors, and it will become a hot commodity. My hope for the future of Winterfest and Kentuckiana in general is that they can split the experience of the two. And what I mean by that is, if Winterfest is going to be a vendor-focused show, then that's great. Open it up. It shouldn't be in one room anymore. Most of the vendors there expressed an interest in being able to spread out. Let them. There's plenty of stuff there that I couldn't even root through because it was crowded. Like, there needed to be more room available. And I know they have 3 rooms because in the Kentuckiana that was a 3-room deal. So let them spread out, make it vendor exclusive, go all in. And then I would like to see the Kentuckiana show, which, if you're not familiar, the Kentuckiana show this year is scheduled for Saturday, July 31st at the same location. Make that show a little bit more about the G.I. Joe experience. Like, if you can get somebody to bring in a celebrity. I know that pretty costly to bring in celebrities, and that maybe that doesn't drive traffic as well as versus the cost. But as a person that is big on that aspect of it, it is definitely a huge motivator for me. I would love to see, I'd list people. I'd love to see voice actors from the cartoon show up, especially ones that I haven't met yet. I would love to see people that are considered like the godfathers of the G.I. Joe toy line. Obviously, Larry comes to mind, and Larry was in Louisville. This might be wrong, but I think I met him around 2012 at a comic book convention. So it's been a while, and I know he's willing to come here once the travel aspect of things opens back up in the world. That's obviously, Larry's going to be a huge pull at any Joe Con, but I have never met Ron Rudat. I don't have anything signed by him. I've never met Kirk Bazigian. I'd love to have stuff signed by them. There are tons of people in the G.I. Joe, like, creator universe, artists, writers, what have you, that I would love to see brought in. Even if you start out small and just bring in one or two people, that would be a big deal for me. If you bring in anybody that did voice acting for the cartoon that I haven't met, it's going to be a high priority for me because I've been collecting those for a while now. So I'd like to see Kentuckiana evolve a little bit into that. Obviously, still a big focus on vendors. I'm still going to buy G.I. Joe stuff, and I always will. But I'd like to see a little bit more of an evolution where we can truly see if these two shows can coexist yearly and still be beneficial for everyone involved. And right now, it looks like that absolutely is the case.
Yeah, I mean, it's great. I would love to see it grow and, I mean, even eventually get big enough to, have to relocate. Not that it's a bad location. It's just, it would be great for everybody if we could have more vendors, more guests, and everybody can make more money, and I could buy even more weird vehicles.
I want to close out the show, lastly, with one other person that we got to interact with there. That was a huge deal for me, and I think for Jaren as well. Mm-hmm. We talked to Jason and his son A, who are 2/3 of the Order of Battle podcast, and that was a tremendously pleasant experience. Jason reached out to me on Twitter prior to this show coming up when we had kind of talked at length a little bit about just the various things, and he's a tremendously likable person. And when we got there, he was helping Todd run his booth, sort of. And we chatted at length about just kind of podcasting in general. And we shared kind of tips and tricks and things we were trying to overcome. And it's really the first networking, I guess, that Jaren and I have done with somebody else that is has the same hobby as us. And so for me, it was a tremendously enjoyable experience. I wish we had had more time to talk with Jason. And the next available opportunity that we have where we're at the same place, I'd really like to do that, where we can kind of get away from the show and just hang out and kind of chat. He was a good dude. If you haven't listened to Order of Battle, it's a tremendously enjoyable podcast. I listen to it every week. It's a little bit shorter than our show, which I think is good. It's a little bit more easier to digest. And they talk about completely different stuff. Like, I listen to pretty much every G.I. Joe podcast that can hold any water at all. And every one of them brings something to the table that I think is unique. Some people only do the comic book. Some people only do the cartoon. Some people only do like news items. And I like all of that. And everybody has their own unique personality as well. And Jason approaches his podcast, I think, in the same way, where they really just want to talk about the things that are enjoyable to them and their experiences, and they just kind of let that conversation flow naturally. They've had multiple interviews with people that are kind of in the fringe of the G.I. Joe universe that don't get the exposure that they deserve, and it's great. It's a good listen. I highly recommend it. Jason has the smoothest, butteriest podcasting voice that I'm tremendously jealous of. He's an ASMR channel waiting to happen. So if you haven't listened to Order of Battle, I highly recommend it. Now I can finally say Order of Battle, friend of the show, something that we've never been able to do before. Check them out. They're great.
If you get the chance to talk to him, do it. That guy is a sponge of information. He knows so much. I mean, and about so many different things. We talked with him about the mask figures and vehicles. We talked to him about Star Wars. I'm a big Star Wars guy. He knows 10 times more than I do, and I feel like I know quite a bit. And just such a sincere dude. Like he's one of those people that you can tell that he really means it and he really enjoys it. Plus, it's great seeing him interact with his kid. Greg and I are both fathers, so seeing that, his son is a little bit older than both of our children. So it's kind of seeing that interaction and seeing them at the show. His son was helping work, also getting to kind of go around and look around. It was such a great experience. and look forward to seeing him again. We were in a little bit of a time constraint with trying to get there early enough, and then I also had, only had childcare for half the day, so having to get home. So next time, if we can, we'll try to plan it. I'll try to get a little bit longer babysitter, and we can spend a little more time together and get to chat, because he is just interesting and just a great dude.
Yeah, I had absolutely no sleep, so I was really trying to keep it held together with strings and buttons. And you're right. As someone who has a younger child in your house, I looked at their relationship and thought, man, I hope that as my daughter gets older, we enter this phase where we can share a hobby that I'm passionate about, even if it's just for a short window, where I can be like, I can show you the world. Look at all these toys. Hey, that's the first time I've sung since the first episode. That's actually pretty statistically good.
Yeah, good ratio there.
All right, everybody. So thanks so much for listening. Make sure you check us out on our social medias. That's Anything Joe's Pod on Twitter and Instagram. You can email us directly at anythingjoespodcast@gmail.com. We have a YouTube page that you might already be on right now listening to this. It's at Anything Joe's. Our Facebook group is also Anything Joe's. I think that's it. Thanks so much for joining us where anything's available for discussion here on Anything Joe's.